Hello, friends and enemies, heroes and villains. Welcome to Epic Realms. Today's guest is an award winning RPG designer. He's also the creative director for Chaosium's Call of Cthulhu RPG. Please welcome the one and only Mike Mason to Epic Realms. Hello, Mike. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm great, thanks. Thanks for inviting me on. Good to be here.
I'm glad that you were able to join us. I love Call of Cthulhu. I love the system. I love that we have a very specific GM in our group that like they just do Call of Cthulhu, and we're always excited when they play it. Uh, so I'm very excited to have you on. There have been people that have been asking to have you on the show, like when are we going to have Mike on? When are we going to have Mike on? He did the new Call of Cthulhu. You got to talk about. He did Warhammer. You got to talk. Like okay. It's gonna happen. Just trust me. Trust the system. That's what I tell them. So
Everything in good time. Everything in good time.
everything
Yeah.
in good time. Yes, for sure. So tell our audience kind of where you got your personal interest into like RPGs. Where did that kind of begin for you?
Oh, that's in the mists of time. That is going back a bit to the where would it be? Late 1970s.
Okay.
Um, and I knew nothing. I mean, I enjoyed playing games, but they were games like, Monopoly and Risk and,
Right.
board games. Um, and I knew nothing about this crazy thing called, role-playing games. And I got invited to a friend's birthday party, and I didn't really know what. I just thought it was going to be a birthday party,
Yeah.
but I got there and it was just my friend, his brother, and some other friends sat around the dining room table with all these miniatures and these cardboard floor plans, and we just played D&D. And I knew nothing about it. We literally, you're playing this. I don't know what I played. Some, fighter probably. You're this guy on the table, this miniature, and I remember we met skeletons and zombies and all sorts, and packed away and had a great time. And I really loved the miniatures. They really kind of held my attention because I'd never seen anything like them before. These really cool wizards and fighters and elves and things, um, and that was kind of my introduction. And I just really enjoyed it. And it wasn't long after till I kind of. I mean, this is back in the day before the internet, so there was no way to go home and then what is role playing and look it up
Yeah,
and
you're
what
not
do I
gonna
need to
Google
buy and
search.
what do I read, and there was nothing. So literally, it was kind of talking to friends at school. Luckily, we had a history teacher who was into gaming as well, and so over kind of by osmosis, I kind of absorbed this knowledge that there are specialist shops that only sell role playing games and all this kind of thing. So I found the local one. Which wasn't in my hometown. It was I had to get my father to drive me there, and once we got there and I was able to buy a D&D basic set and a module and a copy of White Dwarf, I was then set. And then uh, and yeah, I was in. So and then I kind of been playing ever since, really. So
Yeah.
that was my start in a nutshell, to be honest.
Did you still continue using the miniatures and stuff like that, or was that just like
For a
you?
long time, yeah. I mean, for a long time, and I mean, I've still got quite a lot of my original miniatures and many more that have come in the meantime. Um, I don't tend to use miniatures a lot these days, mainly because games like Call of Cthulhu, you can use miniatures with them, but you don't really need to. So they're just a distraction when you're kind of doing a more kind of investigative type of game rather than a combat focused game. But I have, even in Cthulhu, been known to. I did once get out about 100 miniatures and lay them all out, and basically a big cult gathering, and the players really had their miniatures in, and it was the whole session was, you're in the middle of this cult gathering, what are you going to do? This is what it looks like, literally. And so kind of blew their minds with all these miniatures. Obviously I worked for a Games Workshop for a time, so inevitably my time at GW meant I have more miniatures than I had before, because
Right.
GW makes a lot of miniatures, very cool. And so yeah, I love them. And I still paint miniatures every now and again when I get a moment. Not as much as I used to, but I do enjoy, the kind of very relaxing painting
Yeah,
miniatures. So yeah, to try and use them when I can, I guess is the answer.
right. You mentioned Games Workshop. Was that kind of your first big like industry job? How did you kind of get into the industry?
Yeah, well, that was my first proper employment in the games industry. I'd done some freelance work
Okay,
before, and I'd started a fanzine before all that. But GW was the first proper, real job. And I that was just luck. I was working in the real world, doing a real job, and I was kind of bored where I was. I wanted to change things up, and I just looked through the newspaper at the job adverts, and there's a job at Games Workshop for a an events manager, and my background is working in events, marketing and promotions, and project
right.
management, that kind of thing. And so I kind of, well, I know the gaming side, and actually I am professionally an event manager, so why don't I apply? So I applied, and I didn't really think I'd get it, but I did. And so I joined GW as their events manager, and that became events and community manager, and special projects working on, and eventually I ended up moving internally into the part of the company, it's the publishing wing, which is called Black Library, to be their board games and RPG manager for an imprint called Black Industries. So that's where I kind of ended up um, managing the kind of Warhammer Fantasy role playing line. But most of my time is actually developing and finishing and writing the Dark Heresy, the Warhammer 40k role playing game,
Yeah,
which we launched at the time. So yeah, that kind of from running big events like Games Day to opening Warhammer World in GW's HQ in Nottingham, done all that, and then managed to get out the sales side and get back into the creative side, which is obviously where I really wanted to be, but took
right.
a few years to get there, but I did in the end, I guess.
Do you think seeing both sides of that spectrum helped you as far as career goes? When you're on one end and you can see, okay, that was the sales side. I need to keep that in mind when I'm designing this or coming up with stuff, or vice versa.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It, the trick about making well, the trick about keeping a job in games design is designing games that sell. Because we can all design, everyone can design a game. Some people have a talent for it, and people can do a lot of work and do it and produce a game. But if they don't sell, um, you one get disheartened, and so you lose interest. And secondly, no one wants to pay you to design a game because if you're not designing games that actually people want to buy, then you're wasting your time to some degree.
Yeah,
So having an idea about your customers or your potential customers and what they want to buy or what would interest them or what do they need helps to inform, the creative side, and equally the creative side kind of thinking, hey, no one's ever thought of this before. I think they're going to like it. I don't know. Let's try it and you know give it a try. But that kind of a bit of a kind of some commercial awareness, and I just mean that in the sense of understanding your market, understanding your customers, understanding what else is going on in the industry, so you can find the right kind of shape for your game or whatever you're doing
right.
that will fit into that market in hopefully in a successful way. Um, I personally, that's quite important. I mean, there are plenty of game designers who I'm sure would admit that they have got no commercial acumen in that sense, and they're purely into the kind of design and that's cool. That's great. For
Yeah,
me, I think, partly because of my background in working in this kind of field, is that they kind of go hand in hand to me. That it's you do understanding the market helps design the right kind of games, hopefully.
yeah. Were there things that you learned from that first role or series of roles that you took over, and then when you ended up ultimately working at Chaosium, you're like, well, these are tools that I learned here that I can bring to the table here now. And
sure. I mean, everything I've done ever has been something you learn and just assimilate in, and becomes useful down the line. I mean, I did, my degree was in drama and theatre, so which is a million kind of miles away in some degree, to some degree, from game design. However, when you're running a game, there's a bit of theatre involved, and there's a
yeah,
bit of acting involved, and particularly because although I did a lot of acting, I did a lot of stage direction as well. So when you're running a game, directing your players a little bit like actors, making sure they all get their turn and all have spotlights, is a kind of skill that I developed back in those days.
yeah,
But equally, putting on a production in the theatre, let's say, is all about project management, understanding, when, where, what, how, who, and all that, and getting them all working together is very much like project managing a game, or putting a publication out, or running a podcast, or whatever it may be. There's a lot of components you've got to kind of all make work at the same time and bring together. And so those kind of skills, I did, started to develop at university, and then I kind of developed and got more experience working in actually putting on, professional events and things like that, and marketing campaigns, and throughout all of this, I was writing copy. I was writing, technical copy for certain firms I worked for. Others, I was writing advertising copy and editorial copy. Um, so I was developing my writing skills. I mean, I never thought really I'd be a great writer in that sense, but I was just doing it. It was part of my job. I had to write stuff. I had to write letters and books and manuals. Um, and so all that kind of technical knowledge has helped come across. And obviously when I went to GW and was, writing and editing role-playing books there, I was kind of applying that knowledge and learning new stuff as well, because obviously writing a rule book is different to writing a technical manual.
yeah,
Although there's a lot of similarity, because as we know, rules are technical writing, and role-playing writing tends to be a mix of technical and creative writing. You've got the fiction of the plot and the world and the setting and the characters, but then you've got the technical writing of the how do you insert the rules, and how do you make it
yeah.
readable and easy to understand and logical and all that kind of thing. So it's kind of marrying those two things. Yeah, role-playing writing is a kind of real hybrid, in my view anyway, of that kind of technical and creative side, which you don't get often, anywhere else to a large
Yeah.
degree, because often either it's technical or it's fiction, one or the other. You don't pick up a novel in a bookshop, and in the middle of it there's a whole kind of technical thing about what you need to know about the rules of the reading this novel.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So yeah, so all these skills you pick up through life really is they all come to play at the end of the day, and but it's you don't stop learning. It's still a case of you learn more as you do more, and try out things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but you learn from it and move forward.
A lot of RPG designers sit down and they put together. You're talking about like the technical writing and the role playing aspect and the all of that. A lot of the RPG designers, they seem to, while a lot of them do a lot of different things and can do a lot of different things, some seem to excel highly at, I'm really good at the numbers and making things balance, or I'm really good at telling a story, I'm really good at showing this. What would you say, self-inflection, is kind of your strongest point when it comes to putting together one of these?
In terms of the games industry, my strongest point is that I'm a completer finisher. So if I say I'll do something, it will get done, and that is a useful skill in games design and the gaming industry. That's my strongest point. But I think in terms of your question, I think it's the ideas and the expression of ideas is my stronger point, in terms of being understanding how to convey information, hopefully in a relatively concise but easy to understand
Yeah.
form. And that's an evolving process. The more you do, the more you learn yourself, and the better you get at it. Because I mean, the stuff I wrote when I started, I wouldn't write today.
Yeah.
Probably very wordy and unnecessarily complex. And you learn as you go through to kind of refine more and more. I'm not a numbers guy. I dislike math.
Right.
I'm not a numbers guy. I mean, I can, I can work numbers and do all of that stuff, but it's not, it doesn't turn me on in any way. There are other people I know who are far better at it than me. And I rely on those people to kind of crunch numbers and, tell me, does it work? Does it doesn't? And, but I'm better in that kind of, organizational, bringing things together to make all the component parts work better together, and and yeah and yeah, it's that creative fiction side is my bag, really. That's the, kind of coming up with cool ideas and intricate plots and double crossing villains and crazy monsters and all that kind of stuff. That's what I really enjoy.
Yeah. What do you think is your prized thing you came up with before moving to Chaosium? What do you think's like one of the big ones that you're like, I made this. People come up to you all this time and they're like, oh, what about this thing that you did?
I don't know. I guess I am pretty proud of Dark Heresy, the 40k RPG, because it was the first tabletop RPG for the Warhammer 40,000 universe.
Yeah.
And I didn't write it entirely myself. It had, there was co-authors on it, but I had to kind of finish it. I kind of I kind of inherited it unfinished, but I had a really hard deadline that it had to be published by.
Yeah.
And this was my first, proper role play job, and it was kind of like, I cannot miss the deadline.
Right.
I have to meet the deadline. And I've got to now basically finish a role playing rule book, and make it work, not just, just knock it out. I've got to make it actually work. So
Yeah.
that was a big achievement. That was many late nights, working on that. Sitting in the office at 12 o'clock at night. Everyone else has gone home. Just me and Mark, who was doing the layout, literally inputting corrections and correcting typos and last minute things right up until the very last deadline. There was days and days of that just to get it right as best we could in the little time that we had. So that was I'm pretty proud that we actually, we met the deadline. I'm proud that we sold, I think we printed originally 30,000 copies on the first print run. And I think what I'm really pleased about is that we sold all of them before the release date, as in they all got sold in pre-sale. So
Yeah.
it was a big success on day of launch in that sense. So that was really, that was really good. As as a first job, I was quite pleased that we actually managed to achieve that. It was a real good team effort to get it out there. Uh, and I think the game kind of stood up for itself. And as I say, I do things differently now, probably, but at the time, yeah, I was pretty pleased with that. Yeah.
Did you see your schedule kind of increase after that release, after that success? Your personal
Well,
schedule,
no,
conventions and
it
stuff like
was,
that?
the vagaries of working in the games industry. This is so no, it was the absolute reverse, the opposite of that. So on the week that game was released, Games Workshop decided to make a deal to license out all of the work that I did, as in all the games, Talisman, the board game, and Warhammer Fantasy Role Play and Dark Heresy, to Fantasy Flight Games, and actually closed down the bit of the company I was managing, because they decided it was a distraction from their main business, which is toy soldiers and
Miniatures.
wargaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they decided to kind of contract their focus back onto what they would call their core business, which is producing, war games and miniatures rather than board games and role-playing games.
Right.
So a high level decision was made to basically, well, the successful games, we can license them out and get a lot of money and do no work for it. So so basically I launched the game very successfully, but then was out of a job. So
Wow.
I was in the games industry in the games industry 1 week and then out of it the next. And I'd only just started in terms of my game design kind of career. So no one really knew who I was. So people were not knocking on my door offering jobs. So
Right.
I went back into the real world and got a real job, working back in as a marketing director and writing copy again and designing promotions and all that kind of stuff and director sales and all that kind of thing. So I did that for 7 years. But what I did do is pretty much straight away, even though I wasn't, working for anyone else, I started doing my own stuff. I started, I carried on writing game stuff. I carried on developing, even though I wasn't, publishing it. I was still kind of keeping my hand in and getting ideas.
Yeah.
And it's around about that time, about a year after I moved out of GW, that myself and Paul Fricker kind of had the idea to kind of like, we really had been playing Call of Cthulhu for a long time and really loved the game, but we felt that it needed a new edition. We just felt the old one was a bit creaky, and so we came up with the idea to kind of talk to Chaosium about would they be interested in us developing a new edition of the game, and we had that conversation, and we were pretty surprised when they immediately turned around and said, yes, we would like you to do it. So over the course of the next, what it would be 5-6 years, me and Paul, on top of our day jobs, in our free time, were developing what would become Call of Cthulhu 7th edition in our own time. And then which is what how a lot of people do, work in this industry. They work
Right.
freelance, they work on top of another job, and so it was the kind of norm to kind of do that. We didn't have any expectations that we would be kind of writing our ways into another full-time job. It was a freelance gig. We'd do this, give it to Chaosium, and walk away probably, maybe try and write something else later. But that was the kind of deal.
Yeah.
Um,
What does that sound look like? Is it just like you walk in, hey, we want to make this edition, or do you send them like a resume of the things you've worked
oh,
on, or like, hey, I used to have this fanzine that I made that was all Call of Cthulhu based. Can I
sure.
make a game for you?
I it's about doing all the preparation and the groundwork before you get to ask that question.
Okay.
So I mentioned earlier, and you just said again, that I'd done a fanzine, and it was a fanzine that was devoted to the Call of Cthulhu role playing game.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this was back in the late
The
1990s.
Whisperer, right?
The Whisperer, that's right. And so when I was doing that, the first issue, I contacted Chaosium and I wrote them a message and saying, hey, I'm putting a fanzine together. Hope that's okay. Is there anything I shouldn't do, or is there anything I can do? And just ask permission, basically.
Yeah.
And they came back with, yeah, go for it. Do we need to, do we need to give you they said, do we need to give you a license? And I replied with, if you want to, but I will make no money on this, so you're not getting any money either. So they went, oh, don't worry about it then. Just send us a copy when you do it.
Okay.
And like most fanzines, I guess, they weren't expecting I'd do more than one issue probably. So I ended up doing 5 issues, which were like yearly, one issue a year. And through that course, I developed a relationship with Chaosium, and I also, this was pure luck. I would go to European conventions. There's a convention in Germany that used to be on called Tentacles, and there was a convention in the UK that I would go to called Convulsion,
Okay.
and they were very kind of heavy, kind of Chaosium game conventions. A lot of
Yeah.
Cthulhu and RuneQuest being played at those things, and so at those conventions, often somebody from Chaosium would come and be a guest at the show. So I'm already doing this fanzine, and I'm meeting people from Chaosium at these shows, and I'm building and developing the relationship.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting to know them, they're getting to know me. I go to these shows anyway and run loads and loads of Call of Cthulhu. And in fact, what I'm also doing is actually encouraging other people to run Call of Cthulhu, because I'm bringing other people with me
Yeah.
to run games of Call of Cthulhu. And so Chaos would think, oh, this guy's great. He's really into Cthulhu and he knows his stuff. And and he's doing this fanzine, and he's, you know, and so we kind of developed a relationship. So over the course of, I don't know, well, maybe a bit longer, maybe 8 years or so, I've been
Okay.
doing all this, not getting paid. Just this is my hobby, and but getting to know Chaosium while I do it. And so by the time we get to that point where me and Paul happened to be at a convention where the president of Chaosium was a guest at the time. Um, you know, we knew each other. I mean, he'd played in games I'd run,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing. So we knew each other enough to have a, you know, a friendly conversation. So we just, you know, sat down and said, "Hey, we've been thinking about this." And as I say, he returned, and because he knew us already, and he knew that we had a real kind of passion for the game, and that we had a lot of experience in running it, that we, you know, he knew that we weren't just, you know, guys off the street who we didn't know,
Right.
and so, you know, he had confidence that we could hopefully produce something, you know, and so all of that relationship building, all of that prep work, all of that, you know, hours spent in my own time doing a fanzine, all the time kind of spent doing all those kind of things, all they all build, they're all stepping stones to kind of, you know, get you to where you want to be,
Yeah.
and that's really, you know, the case in this point.
So when you sat down and you're coming up with seventh edition, what kind of changes did you kind of want to make? What was in your mind like, okay, we need to, this is good, but this needs to be changed, or this needs to be fixed, or we want to work something else out to fit the theme a little bit better? What kind of changes were you looking at that you really wanted to tackle, like your first ballot list of things?
Sure. I mean, a lot of it was really organic because, as you know, as I said, we've been running. Me and Paul have been running and writing scenarios for Call of Cthulhu, and then running at conventions for many years. And so there was a lot of things, you know, just from our experience, like, you know, hey, the grappling rules for Call of Cthulhu. How do you do it? And then, you know, you'd have a conversation with other GMs, and everyone would have a different answer. Well, I
Yeah.
kind of do this, and then you look at the rule book and you kind of read it, and go like, it's a bit vague. It's not that clear, which is why everyone has kind of interpreted and kind of create their own house rules for how to do grappling mechanics in Call of Cthulhu. So that kind of like goes number one on the list. Like that, clearly that rule could be clearer or rethought through, because there's obviously an issue. Because if everyone's doing it slightly differently, then the rule isn't working.
Right.
So that's kind of, you know, number one. But then what we actually did is me and Paul actually we got together because we live in different parts of the country. We got together and we opened the current edition of the rule book, and we literally went page by page through it with making notes, going like, we like that, don't like that, don't like that, or this doesn't quite work, and we just kind of built up a list, because the main issue I had with the old edition was that it wasn't friendly to new players.
Yeah.
It was quite dense, and had rules information kind of spread across multiple chapters. So, you know, you might be reading the core rules about combat, but then 6 pages later on, after something else, there'd be some spot combat rules. And I'd be like, well, wouldn't it be better to just kind of put them all together, and
Yeah,
then
all
all
in
the,
one spot.
just to make it easier to kind of reference, really. So there's, and a lot of that was just historical, because Chaosium tended to kind of just reprint the rule book, but add new stuff in. And rather than spend a lot of time reorganizing and rewriting, they just kind of, you know, just bolted in basically, which was fine, you
Yeah.
know, back in the day. But people are coming to games with a bit more kind of, you know, awareness about gaming in itself, and they want a kind of an easier entry into the books, and they want to be able to use the books more, um, in an easier way. So, you know, the index worked, and things were logic, you know, that things were a logical process through the book, the information flow. So that was kind of one of my big kind of things I wanted to address. So I wanted to kind of rewrite the rule book from the ground up to make sure that it was uh, approachable, and hopefully it's as clear as we can, with lots of really good examples of how these rules actually work in play. And so that was the kind of one of the driving forces. The other driving force, which you know, Chaosium were very clear about from day one, is that it had to be backwards compatible. Because believe you me, it's far easier to write a brand new rule book than make one that's backward compatible and change things.
Yeah.
So but that was the rule from day one. So that was fine because we could then look and go, okay, well, that rule is fine. We don't need to do anything with that rule. This rule, we could maybe do something with and actually make it more, more interesting or more dynamic in the game or have more relevance. So it was really that kind of process that we went through to kind of define a kind of a shopping list of things where we need to kind of think through new rules or tweaks of rules, because a lot of the seventh edition is actually the same rules as older editions. It's just how some roles are interpreted slightly differently, because in the old rules it was a simple pass fail on a D100,
Right.
and maybe there'd be a special success like 20% would get you an impale success, but that was the only differentiation. It only really mattered in combat.
Yeah.
um, and so, you know, we'd seen games evolving over years, and the whole kind of indie movement of games and game design. We kind of, were aware of all of that and saw what, some of the cool things that came out of that. And we saw other cool things coming out in other kind of more kind of traditional games. And we just felt Call of Cthulhu could do with a bit of an injection of a bit of, innovation. And so, just moving, you still roll the same D100, but now you interpret it slightly differently because
Right.
you've got levels of success. Is it standard success? Is it hard success? Extreme success? That kind of thing. But you're still doing the same thing you did before. So we've not changed what you do. It's just slightly the interpretation of what you do. So a lot of the tweaks are along those lines, so that it could be remain backwards compatible while still having a bit of a new lick of paint on some of the areas of the rules, really.
Yeah. How much work did you have to do on like the layout and like, okay, we're gonna have a splash page here, and then like here's a little window that says like a little explanation of something, things like that. How much of that did you have a hand in?
We had a hand in terms of like the explanation stuff, in terms of like we would look at, we'd have a chapter, and then we'd look about, well, okay, we really need some examples. The combat's a great example of this. Combat, a lot of moving parts in combat. It's not just hand to hand. There's firearms, and
Right.
there's throwing things and pulling arrows, and then there's healing, and then dying, and maybe not dying, and
Yeah.
and all these kind of
And then dealing with
multiple.
creative players that are like, I want to move this plant in the way of them running, or
Yeah,
whatever.
and then you got grappling as well,
Yeah.
and so you've got all these things which all come under combat. So uh, they can get quite technical quite quickly, and so especially when you run a real combat where one character's got a gun, the other's got a sword, somebody else is doing this, somebody else is trying to swing from the chandelier. Um, Suddenly using all these multiple different kind of mechanics in one combat. So we've come to these kind of points and go like, we need an example here to kind of illustrate the rules and make them, ensure that people understand what we're trying to do. So we would build in these, and we'd write these things, and we'd write in these summaries to kind of help us, like, aid memoirs when you are running the game. Um, but in terms of layout, we really, initially anyway, no involvement. That was really, we were doing the text. We'd give the complete book to Chaosium, and then they would go and develop art and the layout and so forth. Um, and But then, as after we passed the text over, and kind of gone through playtesting and all that kind of stuff, Chaosium did want our input. So that's when we were giving ideas, but we weren't really involved. But that's the time that actually Chaosium then turned around and said, did I want to come in and actually work full time and get these books actually produced?
Yeah.
Right, I kind of went, okay.
Yeah.
So I left the real world. I went into the imaginary world of game design, and so then I was heavily involved in the layout and the art direction. In fact, I ended up doing pretty much, not all of it, but a large part of the art direction and art commissioning for the Cthulhu line, and working very closely with layout people like Nick Macario, who did the layout of the original rule book, and helping to kind of fashion those. I mean, I'm not an expert in layout or anything like that, but I had, again, had this vision that I wanted the books to be accessible and readable. So, that was really where I was coming in to kind of say, I think here would be good if we can make sure that box is clear here to read me first or whatever it is, and all that kind of thing. And this image would work better here than here, and all that kind of stuff. So I started to kind of, develop that side of the production side, as when I came in to Chaosium, building on the kind of stuff that I'd done with GW, but much more kind of intensively and much more kind of hands-on with the Call of Cthulhu line, and I've continued to do that going through. Again, not really, because I at the end of it, it's a lot about trusting people's expertise and their experience as well. So I worked with some really, I have worked and continue to work with some people who are very fine layout people who know their stuff, and so I'm not going to be telling them how they should do
Right.
layout,
Right.
but I'll comment that, or maybe if we could tweak that, push that text there a little bit, it might just flow a little easier, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So little tweaks, little suggestions, but I trust people, who know what they do. That's the whole point of working in a team like this, is to trust people, and utilize their experience, in a positive way. So yeah.
When you got in, when you first came in, when they're like, we want you to be here full time and work on these full time, from that point to now, has your role changed within the
um
company?
it, Not really. To some degree, yes, but not really. I mean, ultimately, I was taken on to make sure we could put out lots of Cthulhu books, and a lot of books that people would want, and that would generate sales that would then be reinvested into Cthulhu line and Chaosium to allow us to do other books and so
Yeah.
forth. And that's not changed. So I still do exactly that same thing. My job is to get cool books and put them out, and hopefully that people have a great time at the gaming table with. But underneath that, there's a lot of kind of changes here. Not changes. Like any job, you just tend to take more and more on.
Yeah.
Just do that as well and do that. So from time to time, at times at Chaosium, I've been involved in licensing and working with our licensees who may be doing foreign language editions of Call of Cthulhu, or
Okay.
sometimes our English language licensees, who are doing their own thing based off the Call of Cthulhu rules. And so I get sent stuff, and I'm looking at what they've done, and I might kind of say, hey, this rule here, you've actually not quite doing it right, and so kind of giving them some technical advice. Or it may be kind of artistic advice in terms of the words, and in terms of you've decided to kind of use this kind of monster. Have you thought about using this monster, because I think it might fit better, or that kind of, but most of the time it's just a bit of hand holding, or just sort of, or even just saying, yeah, that reads really well, and
Right.
that sounds like a really great adventure, and great, carry on. So so there's that kind of licensing things and approvals I kind of get involved in every now and again. But the longer I mean, the busier I just get busier and busier at times.
Right.
So when I started, it was just me. It was just me doing Call of Cthulhu, but now it's me, and then I've got a kind of an editorial team who work with me. So Lynn Hardy, but now she's off now running her own line with Rivers of London. Keris McDonald and Jamie in Australia, and now Paul Fricker has joined the team as well. And so the four of us kind of working, writing and editing and developing the books, as well as commissioning art and working with layout people to kind of get the books together. Working with people like Matt Ryan to produce the maps and the handouts for games like Call of Cthulhu, which have a lot of handouts, all that kind of thing. Someone's got to do all of that. Someone's got to start the process and write what is on the handout. Someone's got to actually draw. This is what I think the map should look like, and this is what is in room 1 and room 2 and all the rest of it. And then part of the role is kind of managing that process, where you kind of hand it over to an actual artist to actually produce the finished thing, but you've got to work with the artist to ensure that it still conforms to what's written in the scenario, because it's a kind of a maps are an extension of the scenario text in that way. They've got to sync 100%. Otherwise, you look at a map and there's a big kind of cave and it's never mentioned in the text. Everyone's going to go, well, what's in the cave? And we are, well, I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, so it's got to work hand in glove in that way. So yeah, kind of everyone has said, everyone, I get asked, am I busy? Like, yeah, I'm always busy. I've always got lots of things to do. So it's a continual cycle. You know, once you got one book done, guess what? There's another 3 coming along.
Right.
So yeah, it's a constant thing, but it's good. I enjoy it. So that's good.
You mentioned earlier kind of, this was kind of an old edition and in its own time. And it almost seems like you've kind of got your finger on the pulse of what the gaming world kind of is, whether it's coming out with PDFs, fairly early compared to a lot of other game companies, coming out with, when the pandemic hit, coming out with really nice stuff for digital role playing, whether it's Roll20 or anything like that. What is it that kind of makes you go, we need to do this, we need to keep our fingers on the pulse? Is it the fact that maybe it's a smaller company and you can blow things through a lot quicker, you don't have to go through a lot of red tape, or what kind of is it that helps along with that?
There's a little bit of that definitely in that kind of a smaller company like Chaosium. It's a little bit more agile and can adapt a little bit more quickly, perhaps. So there's a little bit of that, and also Chaosium's already has always been that company that's a little left field. We're I'm not sure I can say we're all a bunch of hippies, but certainly it used to be, and all kind of very kind of creative people, very kind of lots of ideas and very passionate about the kind of things we do. So that naturally kind of bubbles up these kind of crazy ideas and good ideas and bad ideas, and we give them a try, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. So but a small company has that kind of ability to kind of do that sometimes.
Right.
So yeah, there's yeah, just kind of being prepared to kind of give things a shot, really, and give them a go. But I mean, in terms of the real answer to this is, in fact, I'm a gamer too. I don't sit in an ivory tower and write these big role-playing games and never play them and never
Yeah.
understand how they're used, because I'm a gamer. I started as a gamer. I'm still a gamer. I happen to also be a games designer as well now, but I'm still a gamer. I
Yeah.
still role play. I still run games. I still play in games. So I and this is not unique to me, but because I do that, I kind of know what works at a gaming table, or what I think will work, and even more importantly, I know what I would like to see. So
Yeah.
I would like to be able to, back in the day, in the early days of computing, when I was role playing, I'd be like, wouldn't it be great if there was a program that you could kind of create a load of characters really quickly and print them out? Wouldn't that be brilliant? Oh, that'll never happen. And now we've got it,
Yeah.
and would it be great if we could role play online? If you could like video conference. I mean, I remember going into a design studio once many years ago, and everyone was really excited, and they took me to this computer and said, we've got to show you this new thing. And they showed me a video clip on the computer, and it was about that big, and they played like 10 seconds of video, and it was like groundbreaking because no one had ever seen it before.
Yeah.
And and from that to kind of like us chatting on now in real
Right.
time, playing games in real time, it's a million miles away, but that's what technology can do. And so being open to that and kind of thinking about how can that help me as a player? If it helps me and I think it's cool, then it might help other people too. So there'll come a day when whatever it is you're in your hand, whether it's your phone still or some thing wired into your skin, whatever it may be, it's going to help you do the gaming better. Maybe you press a button and you can do all these great voices
Yeah.
as a GM. I speak like Orc, and you just press the button. You don't have to worry about it. You can just do it. Or speak with a really good American accent. That would be the one I want. I mean,
That's okay.
who
All
knows?
the all the American people want to speak with your accent, so there you go.
So I mean, it's being kind of, obviously you can waste lots of money on technology. So it's kind of like it's always in balance. What's going to work, what's not going to bankrupt the company, but what is going to work and what do people need and what do they want, and trying to find that right balance, and things like introducing the Call of Cthulhu character sheets. They were available as PDFs for a long time, but
Yeah.
building in the kind of the autofill features. So I told you already, I don't like doing math, so having the PDFs do all the math for you, I just put in 50% and it does all the working out for me.
Yeah.
And it saves me time as a keeper from creating pre-gens, saves me time as a player. I'm going to worry about it. It's all done for me. That was a kind of I'm sure other companies have done something similar already, but that for us was a new thing. And and we haven't looked back. We continue to do that kind of thing, and we still talk about character sheets and how to innovate them and take them forward, that kind of thing, make them easy to use and all that kind of thing. Still not, we haven't still got a perfect character sheet. We will get there one day, perhaps.
Maybe. I don't know if there is such a thing, because things are always evolving and always improving and always getting
Exactly.
better. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so be it RPGs or board games or video games, movies, what is it about the Lovecraftian lore that just kind of that you think just kind of draws people in all the time? Because it's a very specific genre. It's like when somebody has a genre and it's their genre based on just their stuff. What brings all of those people together for this genre?
I think ultimately Call of Cthulhu is a mystery horror game. And so what and that's really cool, because actually you're pulling on two different sorts of entertainment types. One is horror, and horror's got a big audience. A lot of people love horror films and reading horror books, but not everyone. And but then there's mystery, which you kind of we'll call kind of crime. If you talk about mainstream things, crime and mystery books and police procedurals and detective stories and all that kind of thing is one of the biggest genres, in terms of what people like. And so Call of Cthulhu does a little trick of pulling them both together, because at the end of the day, um, the what works for people is a good story.
Yeah.
The end of it's why we like films. It's why we watch hours and hours of TV and series, and it's why not everyone, but a lot of people read too. We like a good story, and humans have been liking stories since before there was history. Getting around the fire and telling stories to each other and learning and teaching and all that kind of thing. We've been doing it a long time, and the reason we've been doing it a long time is because it works and we like it. And role playing is that wonderful kind of art medium that brings that to you. You get to not only participate in the story, but you have to kind of partly tell it as well, in terms of what your character does and what the NPCs do or whatever, depending on what you're doing. But we're sharing the story. We're sharing a story making process, and the bringing in that kind of mystery horror. We could be playing a fantasy game or a sci-fi game. That's cool as well. But for Cthulhu, it's bringing in that kind of horror mystery, and people just love a mystery. You want
Yeah.
to know want to know why did that happen, or who did that, or why, what's going to happen next. And you're naturally kind of drawn in, and you want to. We naturally we want to solve things. We have it. We're presented with puzzles. We want to solve them. It's a natural kind of human emotion. So Call of Cthulhu does that, particularly well, I think. And so it engages in what we're talking about. It engages you. It engages your mind, engages your interest, and propels you into it. And kind of going back to the whole kind of Lovecraftian cosmic horror kind of thing. I mean, that just provides a kind of you're kind of dressing around all of those kind of core components.
Right.
And the thing is, why cosmic horror works today is because we're all aware of cosmic horror, whereas in terms we understand far better now um, our kind of humanity's place in the universe, even in our own lives and on the planet. Our significance. We know from the kind of early 20th century onwards. our place has kind of been diminished. You know, we're not the center of the world, we're not the center of the universe. The sun doesn't, you know, we doesn't revolve around us, we revolve around the sun and all the rest of it. And so that kind of consciousness we understand kind of what being insignificant is. And so we kind of cling to what shreds of significance we have. And the whole kind of factor of the Cthulhu mythos is kind of like shredding that even further into kind of nothingness. And that's the horror that actually we each day in our real lives, we cling to meaning in whatever way we can, you know, whatever small shred or kind of thing it may be, personal relationships, your work, your what you output, how all the things around you, it's what we do. It's a natural thing.
Right.
And and the horror comes from the fact that Cthulhu mythos shreds that, and you become even more insignificant. And so, and I think that kind of basis of horror is something we can more easily understand and comprehend than maybe if we were playing this game 200 years ago or 300 years ago. That concept wouldn't be that well understood,
Yeah.
and would seem odd. And but now it resonates with us because we see it in our lives, and so it feels a bit more real in a sense, I guess. um that's a very long-winded roundabout
Well, it's
answer, I
not an
think.
easy question either, right? It's not an easy question because it's so the
Not
scope
an
is
easy,
so large. It's really
and but I kind of need to kind of tail end it by saying, and hey, horror, mystery, and cosmic horror aren't necessarily everyone's cup of tea.
no.
It is a subset of gaming. um Other people may much prefer no horror in their games. They want a much more kind of heroic journey, kind of fantasy-esque type game. And that's cool too. I play those games as well, but I also particularly like horror mysteries. And so, but everyone's got a different kind of take on these things. When
Right.
I worked for Games Workshop and you used to make toy soldiers, um, there was a kind of a saying that, not everyone is into, building model kits.
Right.
That's fine. If you're not into that, that's cool. There will be other things you can do that you will have a great time with. And that's what's really great about the hobby that we're in, is that, there are so many diverse games and diverse voices kind of doing cool and old and new things. That there's always something that's gonna be your bag. I just happened to have found mine really early in my role-playing career, and then made a career out of it. So there's hope for everyone, I guess.
Yeah. And for those that are listening, I want to emphasize, if you've never played Call of Cthulhu, if you don't know anything about Call of Cthulhu, one of the things I love about it is it's kind of, you can have a rotating cast without a lot of struggle because it's almost designed that way. Like, not every, like, you're eventually you're either going to die or you're going to go insane, and you're going to have to make a new character and introduce them into the party, right? So it's kind of
Not
nice. So you can
necessarily,
have, you
but
can
yeah, I mean,
intro.
there's a percent. I mean, at the end of it, it's a horror game, so your characters are at risk of dying, and
Yeah.
that's absolutely true. But I've run many a game where the characters all survive. They go on to tell the tale, and they go on and do something else. But as I say, it's a horror game, so your character may not have a long life in that way. But that's cool because you're playing a horror game.
Yeah.
Like a horror film, you don't expect everyone in a horror film to survive to the end.
Right.
That wouldn't be horror then, would it?
Right.
So, as long as you come in with the right kind of understanding of what the game is, then hopefully your expectations will be met. It's when you kind of come in a game and you don't really know what it is, and no one's explained it to you, and you kind of think it's just going to be like playing Traveller, and we're going to roam around the world, and we're going to make loads of money and do some heists.
Right.
That's a different game. But that's not the player's fault. They've not been brought into the fold and got an appreciation for it.
Yeah.
And as I say, it doesn't float everyone's boat, but for plenty of people it does. And some people like it as a diversion to the other games they do, because it plays, as you say, quite differently sometimes, and
Yeah.
it's a quite different feel to other games. So it can be quite a good palate cleanser between whatever your regular game is, or you may get hooked like me, and you end up playing big campaigns of Call of Cthulhu,
Right.
and maybe your character does survive 6 years of playing a campaign, and so forth. But
Yeah.
it's all there to play for, and
Yeah.
it's a very flexible game in that way that you can play really cool one shots like a horror film one shot,
Yeah.
or you can play these grand campaigns that could go on for anywhere from a month to, you know, 3 6 years, if
Right.
depending on your gaming group.
And if you introduce a new character, you're not introducing a first, in D&D terms, you're not introducing
There's no levels,
yeah, there's no
no
levels.
levels.
So you're not introducing a first level character with a bunch of 18th level where you don't have to build. Everybody is it's fairly well balanced even as the game progresses and as you get stronger, you can still introduce a new character and it's just as easy.
Yeah,
So,
it's yeah, really is easy, and they're not, they're all characters are equal in Call of Cthulhu in a sense. They're all on the same level in that sense. No one ever gets higher than that and never gets lower than that. So that balance is inbuilt, that you never feel that, oh, everyone's my character died and everyone's got everything they need. No, your character could come in, your new character could come in with some special knowledge or a skill that nobody else has got, and suddenly you are now the expert in the group. That you
right.
are now core player, um, and yeah, it can work in all sorts of ways like that.
Yeah, I love it. You've got a new book out, right? The Arkham setting book?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, it was released last week. It's just called Arkham for Call of Cthulhu. It's a supplement for the game, and if you probably heard the word Arkham before, because if you watch the Batman film, there's
Right.
Arkham Asylum in Batman and all that kind of thing. But Arkham was originally a fictional town created by the guy who actually invented Cthulhu and all that kind of thing, and what the game is kind of draws some of its initial kind of basis from, and it's this fictional town in New England. And Arkham book basically is the town in a book. So if you imagine, it's everything you need to play games set in this witch cursed, haunted kind of town in New England in the 1920s. Everything you need to know, where everything is, who's who, what do they know, what secrets do they have, what monsters are living in the basement, all that kind of stuff. And so you can run it as a backdrop to your scenarios. If you're running published scenarios or your homebrewing scenarios, it can be like your setting. Equally, you can use the book as a big sandbox campaign. You want to kind of have a group of investigators and players in Arkham, and they're so full of detail there that you can then kind of sandbox it and say, okay, so these stories have come up in the news, or you've heard this rumor. What do you want to do? And you
Yeah.
can literally freeform it through. So it works, covers all the bases in that way. It kind of works as a very kind of exciting and interesting kind of setting, and works as equally as a sandbox. Now, this is Arkham, which is the home to the Miskatonic University,
Yeah.
which has got a copy of the Necronomicon in it, and there's ghouls that live in the graveyards, and there's a strange witch cult hidden away that nobody knows about that get up to dubious things. You've got all these lots of things happening, but you control it all, and it's all presented in a very kind of easy to read, easy to use kind of fashion, that you can kind of pull bits and change them, and it's very malleable. So yeah, that's just come out, and you can get it from chaosium.com. You can buy it in PDF, you can buy it in the print. If you buy the print, you also get the PDF for free, and it comes with these big maps of Arkham, those street plans, and all sorts of cool things, and a prop newspaper, the Arkham Gazette with all these stories in. You can use as plot seeds and all kind of cool things like that. So that's available from us now, but also you can you can get it in game stores as well, and wherever you can buy role-playing games, be it
Yeah.
drive through or you find your local game store. So yeah, that's just come out, and very excited to kind of see the reviews that are coming in now, which all seem to be pretty glowing. Fingers crossed. So yeah.
I love those immersion books that really get you in there, that get the details in, and like here's everything on in this area, or here's this character that runs this business, stuff like that. I love those
Absolutely.
little attention to
Yeah.
details things are just so much fun. Just even if we don't play through them, just to read them and go, oh, that's cool, oh, that's neat. What other stuff you got
Absolutely.
coming up? You got other stuff that's in the works that you can talk about that's not
Yeah,
quite out yet?
sure. Yeah, well, we're going to follow Arkham. There's a couple of scenario collections that are coming out thereafter. There's one is a kind of a mini campaign. It's like a three scenario campaign that takes place partly in Arkham nearby and a bit on the sea as well, without giving too much away. That's called the Curse. No, that's called the Order of the Stone, and that's going to be coming out fairly soon. And we've also got another scenario collection which is called No Time to Scream, and that is
That's
three.
terrifying name.
Yeah, No Time to Scream. I keep thinking of James Bond, No Time to Die, but No Time to Scream. And that's three scenarios that you can play that take about an hour to 2 hours to play each one. So they're like an evening's game, and they are um, set up to be quite accessible for if you're a new GM or you've got a bunch of new players. They're quite introductory in nature in a sense, and you can kind of play them together and maybe take a group through. And they come with sets of pre-gen characters. And there's one takes place in a hospital morgue. There's one out in the mountains with a raid on a bootleg gin distillery, and there's another one where you're invited to the old wooden cabin of this old professor who's got something to show you that he thinks you'll find interesting. And all of these, then open out into these weird and wonderful kind of crazy plots where strange things will happen, and otherworldly monsters and whatnot will come and bother your players and whatnot. So they're all a lot of fun. And so we've got those two coming out in the not too distant future. And then after that, a little later in the year, I'm really pleased we're going to have the Victorian kind of late Victorian setting for Call of Cthulhu,
Oh,
which is called Cthulhu by Gaslight. And
nice.
this is going to be a brand new edition of that kind of setting for the game, which kind of primarily kind of focuses on kind of the UK, England, into that kind of Victoriana kind of
Yeah.
place, London and Queen Victoria and all that kind of thing.
Around like the
But we've
Sherlock Holmes era.
absolutely that. So we've expanded that a little bit more. So we're actually expanding it out. So you not only concentrate on London, but the whole UK. There's a kind of guide to parts of the UK and things going on, but also across the Atlantic to the East Coast. Victorian era Boston and Chicago and New York, that kind of thing. So you don't have to be based in England, or you might travel between the two,
Yeah.
and also Europe as well. So you can. It's got a kind of expansive kind of view on it, but we'll be releasing two core books for that Cthulhu by Gaslight line. There'll be like the player's guide, which is gives you all this kind of setting material, everything you need to know as a player, character generation, and also includes all the kind of core rules for Call of Cthulhu. So you can buy the first Gaslight book, and you don't need to slowly go and buy the core Call of Cthulhu rule book, because you've got all the kind of the basic rules in there to be able to play the game. You might later on, if you want to get into deeper stuff, might want to go and buy the rule book later on, but you don't have to, and you certainly don't have to straight away. So that's like the analogy would be a bit like the D&D player book, and it's got all the rules in, character gen, and everything you need to know as a player about the Victorian era. What equipment can I get? What the weapons going to buy? How do I get around? What's if there's no cars, what do I go? Well, there's carriages, and these are the different types and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And then that's followed by a keeper guide to Gaslight, which is all the secret stuff that players shouldn't know.
Yeah.
All the dark conspiracies and the villains and the monsters and scenarios in that book as well. So and together they kind of form the core kind of components for the Gaslight line, and then there'll be other kind of Gaslight collections of adventures and campaigns that will follow that down the line as we go forward. they're the big things. I'll say one. I'll give you one sneak peek of one other thing.
All right.
We've got a very very cool modern day, as in, well, I say modern day because I think of, because Call of Cthulhu's the main setting is a kind of 1920s 30s. So anything past that in my head is modern day. So this is modern day, but it's set in the 1980s,
Okay.
which isn't that modern now, is it really? But in the 1980s, in Japan. And that's probably all I can say, other than
Okay.
there are, if you've ever heard of kind of a mythos thing called the King in Yellow,
Yeah.
that's that entity is heavily involved in that
Oh.
particular
Okay.
campaign. And but I won't say any more on that. But there will be more on that later on this year, and that's pretty cool. I have to say that is if whether you're a King in Yellow fan or not, it's a great bunch of scenarios that form a really interesting and innovative campaign. So we've got that one to look forward to as well. But I keep saying I won't say any more. Can't say any more. I'll get told off. But that's all I'd
All
say.
right. So coming up, you're going to be at Chaosium Con in the U.S. on April 13th and 16th, correct?
Yeah, so I mean, that's in Ann Arbor in Michigan, just outside of Detroit, in April at Chaosium Con. And I think tickets are still on sale for that. You can find them by going to our website, chaosium.com. Um, and then a couple of months later, I'm actually going to the first Chaosium Con Australia, which is in
Australia, yeah.
Melbourne, Australia. So it's a bit of a fly in the world at this point. So I'm really looking forward to both Ann Arbor and Australia, because it's great to kind of meet the people who are playing with the books and playing the games and getting their feedback and listening to them and playing games with them as well. So that's real high points of
Yeah.
the year for me to be going to those ones.
And the
And
Australia one is June 8th and 9th, I have.
yeah, and again, just go to the Chaosium website and you should be able to find more information. I think the tickets for the Australia one haven't quite gone on sale yet, but I think they're going on sale any day now, I
Okay.
think.
Awesome.
And
Awesome.
then
And you're going to be doing a symposium that's called, now hold with me on this, Areas of Effect, Planar Systems, Critical Roles, and Gaming Imaginaries. I think I
oh
got it.
yes, so that's an unusual one. That's a 1 day kind of not really a convention. It literally is like a symposium
Yeah.
of different talks and panels on role playing games, and that's happening in London, England,
March 9th.
and yeah, in March. And it's actually happening inside an art gallery, so it should be really cool. So I'm going down to talk about horror games and Cthulhu and that kind of thing. So that'll be really interesting. I'll be joined with a lot of other kind of people who work in the industry and game designers and so forth. So should be kind of a lot of interesting things to hear and question and so forth. So
Yeah.
that'd be cool.
And they got some gaming
Um,
there too, I saw. It's like, oh, that's kind of
yeah,
neat.
yeah, they're going to do because it's kind of aimed at people who game and who don't game, but have got an interest. It's kind of fairly free form, but
Yeah.
they are doing a kind of a live play at the end of the day, so you can watch how a game happens. If you've never seen role playing before, you can watch a game kind of going on and see what's involved and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Nice. And then you've got Necronomicon in Providence on
Yeah,
August
well,
15th and
yeah,
18th.
I'm back in the summer in the August into back to the US for actually Gen Con to start with in Indianapolis,
Okay.
and then a couple of weeks later it's Necronomicon in Providence, Rhode Island, which is again another highlight of the year for me, because it's the convention that is purely about Lovecraftiana, weird fiction, Cthulhu, horror fiction, weird fiction, and so there's kind of like you get a lot of writers in terms of novelists and short story writers, artists who paint horror and weird art, and a load of gamers like me who turn up and play lots of games and panels and talks and things like that. So it's a great chance to kind of meet up with people I work with who I don't see often face to face, writers I work with and artists and so forth. and get together and tell tall tales about Cthulhu and the Necronomicon and all that kind of crazy stuff. So yeah, looking forward to all of those.
Awesome. Your socials, people can find you on X at Mike Mason, on Facebook /Mike D Mason, or Blue Sky at Mike of Cthulhu. Also, you guys can check out Chaosium Games, their Facebook / Chaosium Inc. On X, Chaosium_Inc. Instagram, Chaosium. Twitch, guys, they have a Twitch channel /Chaosium Inc. And on Blue Sky at Chaosium as well. Did I get all those right, or at least close to right?
You did, yeah. We're like everyone else. We've got tentacles everywhere across social media, and we've got on YouTube. You can catch it on Twitch and YouTube. You can see a lot of live play games and pre-recorded games of people playing a lot of the Call of Cthulhu adventures or other games that we do like Pendragon and RuneQuest and Seventh Sea. Whatever flavor of gaming you like, if we do one as Chaosium, you can come and watch and see what we do and get a feel for some of the games as well if you've not tried them as well.
Awesome. Mike, thank you for being here and joining us on the podcast. Those watching the live stream, we will do the live stream Q&A here in a moment, so please make sure to get your questions in the chat for Mike. Everybody, I want to let you know, coming up, we're going to be having Christopher Schmitz. He's an amazing author. He's got over 24 novels out there, and he does almost every single genre in fiction. If you've got a genre of fiction that you like, chances are he has a series in that. He's a really hardworking author, does some amazing work. So he's going to be joining us on March 11th live right here on stream, or you can catch that podcast. That'll be available March 12th. So for Mike Mason, I am Nick, and I want to thank you all for listening to Epic Realms.